Live from Derbyshire, this is The Sunday Lunch Show with Brent Poland, and you are listening live.
Good afternoon and welcome to The Sunday Show with me, Brent Poland, and I'll have my guest Adam Spencer on as well. We'll be talking today about the average week of a teacher. What was our life like this week? Our highs, our lows, the laughter, the madness that is the teaching profession. So tune in and talk it out with me, Brent Poland and Adam Spence.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org or join in the conversation by downloading the Podbean app and following Teachers Talk Radio. #TT Radio.
So hi there and welcome to the Sunday Show with me, Brent Poland, and I have my guest, my regular contributor, Adam Spence. And this week we thought it was a good idea to have a look at the average day and the average week of an average teacher. Now, I'm not going to claim that I'm an average teacher because I don't define what an average teacher is. That's something we can have a discussion about. But I am a head of department, yes. I've taught 18, 19 years. But I don't have sort of middle management pastoral roles. I am mostly a classroom teacher, so and secondary. So this is an atypical week. It's probably slightly more of a special week in some ways when you consider some of the things I've done this week. But it wasn't that I chose this week to have this sort of show. This is just the way the chips have lied. So some of the things I would have done this week aren't always the things I would normally do. But then there's other times when I do extraordinary things like take kids on trips. So this is an average week of an average teacher. So how's your week been then, Adam?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Well, it's been one of those weeks, hasn't it, again, where, you start the week, kind of get excited about it, kind of get into the week. But it's been a long one. Definitely feels like a long one this week. Obviously, the dark when you wake up, dark when you come home doesn't help. However, there's lots of things that have happened that have been really memorable as well. So kind of it's not kind of a negative thing that we want to talk about. We want to talk about there's been lots of highs within that, but it's been one of those weeks that's gone average about 50 hours, I think, this week.
You've done 50 hours
I
this
think
week?
50 hours this week, yeah.
I totaled up my hours this week, and I count from last Sunday, so I'm not going to count this Sunday.
Yeah.
So in total, I did 50.5 hours in school.
Yep.
So I'm usually a late leaver to school. My caretaker will testify to sometimes actually, ironically, accidentally locking me in and then me at the door going, let me out. So I do tend to stay late to try and avoid bringing stuff home.
Yeah.
So in total, I was 50.5 hours in school. And then on top of that, there was another 11 or 12 hours. So I'm talking 60 odd plus hours this week, which is a slightly unusual week because I had a lot of data to enter this week. So there's a lot of first time data entry getting ready.
That's the same for me as well. So we've had assessments. So I teach a lot of BTEC stuff. So we're marking assignments and they can kind of be quite long. But we've also got A-level mock exams that have come in this week. And obviously they take a lot of time to kind of process, mark, check and moderate with the team as well. So they kind of, especially a BTEC assignment for me, we're talking an average one assignment is about kind of 10 pages long. It's a 10-page report. Got about kind of 24 of them to mark kind of as things go on. So although I talk about hours, there's all sorts of other things going on as well because you have to process. There's processing time within that, isn't there? That kind of goes before and after that hour. So maybe it does go over 50 hours for me. I'm talking about 50 hours in terms of literally me being in the building, kind of doing stuff. But there's lots of kind of processing all the stuff that we're doing well.
It's the thinking about it's like planning lessons.
Yeah, that's right.
Your thing about teaching is it's an immersive job because you're always on duty. You're always thinking. You're always, oh, that's a really good idea. You're always dipping in and out. You're always having these conversations. It's mentally draining because even when you say you have your lunch, I had 2 lunches this week.
Yeah.
2 lunches where I sat down and talked to my colleagues. Other lunches were spent in union business and supervising children. Break times. Oh, sometimes, snaffling a cake while running out of the staff room with a cup in hand while trying to unjam a photocopier. Yes, there is still people jamming the photocopier when you need a couple of copies. So,
Can someone
all
help
those-
Brent out here and not do this? So
Yeah.
so it gives him a bit of a break during the day, because it's definitely a bone of contention for you, isn't it?
It's just, I want to know who this person is that keeps jamming the photocopy, especially the colour photocopy.
Yeah.
I like my sources done in colour. There's no point giving the GCSE kids, colour photocopy. They need the colour photocopies, don't they? So yes, it's just when you add up all those interactions, all these little sort of things that take up it's the brain space.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
It's that kind of, you just don't always, as a teacher, get to switch off because there's a next deadline, or there's the next lesson to plan, or there's always a set of books that could do with a good mark, or there's a learning review coming up, or there's some bureaucratic nonsense that you have to service because somebody from has read something on a course that they did and they think it's a good idea that can be applied to us. We're constantly on a treadmill like hamsters on a wheel, we teachers, aren't we? And it is just immersive. So you're right. The total number of hours you worked, it's not true to the total number of hours that your brain's been working.
Yeah.
That makes us that we're trying to.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to say, really. I mean, yeah, kind of, all that what the general public don't understand is that there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes thinking that goes into something. So although yes, there's hours to actually do something, kind of to try and be creative. I mean, that's a skill, isn't it? I mean, like maybe we can talk about skills that we've used during the week. All these different kind of skills that we pull on just to try and get something to happen, or to make something, you said, immersive, creative. Obviously, to make something work in the classroom, to give students a new experience. All these things need to come from somewhere, and they're coming from this incredible collective resource in a school.
The hive mind.
The hive mind, that's right. So it's almost like a kind of big bubble. I know it's been called like a blob before, but imagine a very creative blob. Sorry if that's too controversial.
We're not talking about Voldemort, are we? We're not talking about the ex-minister. No, we're not. We're keeping it light.
Keep it light, yeah. I want to switch that and think about it as almost like this, as you said, like a huge brain working as a collective kind of force. Ultimately to serve us all. This is the next generation, isn't it? These are the people that we're teaching. They're the people who are going to solve some of the problems that we have in our futures. They come from teachers. It comes from this kind of collective process of thought that we all have.
It's that constant, isn't it? The constant problem solving, the constant. I have my facts of the week. So these are my facts of the week.
Yeah,
go
for it. Yeah.
62 hours plus I worked this week. I have inputted 1,800 pieces of data, behavior, synaptic data, skills checks data, competency data. So my spreadsheets are up to date. So I'm now up to date with every child, and they're all color coded. I have made 5 phone calls to parents. I saw 29 parents at Parents' Evening for 5 minutes each. I deleted 62 emails, which are completely irrelevant. I've got into a habit now of just going, not even reading it, it's deleted, not even reading it, it's deleted, delete, filter out.
Yeah.
I replied to and sent 13 emails. 4 of them were whole school. I've taught 20 periods, 4 subjects, 397 children. I had 5 meetings, including 2 online meetings, and I gave out 67 positives, so positive points or positive recommendations, and unfortunately 4 negative points this week, which I don't like to give them out, but they were for students who had just gone way beyond my pale, and I had to log their behaviour. So that's kind of facts of my week.
Yeah.
And it's, again, behind every single piece of that is a story or a child or a parent or a colleague. And that's the thing. It's that constant interaction, not just with the children, but with my colleagues, with other stakeholders.
Yeah.
That you never, those emails were going out and being answered at 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night, phone calls made at 5 o'clock. Parents' Evening went on till nearly 6:30. Some of those negatives were handed out during lunch break and dinner breaks. the unions stuff was done at lunchtime. So it's that kind of constant sort of like a hamster on a wheel.
Yeah. So I think we've kind of been in the trade, as it were, for what, 20 years? Do you think nearly, maybe 15?
2 decades, 18 years. Yeah.
Have you ever found a way of maybe we can do a bit of a self-help thing? Have you found a way of actually doing this better? Have you ever found a way, or is it just we just got to accept that this is just the amount, and we just need to kind of get through it? Or are there teachers? And this would be great to hear from anybody that's listening today, either through Twitter or through contacting the show or calling in. It'd be great to actually have some people to call in today. But has anyone been able to kind of create a system that they go, right, this is what I'm doing? Because I've tried the to-do lists, and I've just found them depressing because they just keep growing, and I kind of just build up these to-do lists as I've gone. Or is there a way of kind of is there a technological answer? If people found a way to kind of think, this is what I'm going to do today to make sure. Is there a utopia out there? Is what I'm after. Is there a way of really doing this so we don't kind of get absolutely shattered in a couple of weeks? And
I've just accepted that when teaching, things change, and then you constantly have to evolve. You have to constantly reinvent yourself, like some sort of pop group. You have to be like Madonna. You know what I mean? 80s Madonna, 90s Madonna. Current Madonna. Oh my word! We have to be a constant sort of chameleon of constantly changing and constantly evolving.
Yeah.
It is like that. Yeah. And no sooner as a new initiative come in, there is the kind of some of it sticks and you figure it out. But it's the constant struggle to make systems streamline. And you always, and that in itself takes time, doesn't it? Like, oh, there's a new way of doing things. Okay, let's figure that out. We saw that during COVID, where we had to figure out how to do Teams all of a sudden.
That's right.
And I suppose one of the positives of it is that we teachers are not standing still. We have to constantly learn and evolve and come up with systems. It's kind of what we're asking the kids to do sometimes, isn't it? Because you think about what they're learning is we have to constantly learn and evolve and come up with better ways of doing it. But you are right. Sometimes the things that really annoy us is when you can clearly see something is bureaucratic nonsense and you go, why are we doing this? And that's the thing that always, I'm terrible in meetings because I will be that person that puts the hand up and goes, come on. Why are we doing it? Oh, we're doing it because we're told to do it. And I become the naughty school kid. I literally put myself into my naughtiest child going, sir, why are we studying this? And the thing about it, I think the most important thing I do in my lessons is we're studying this because the rationale, and I always explain the reason. And it's probably never got me promoted because it's probably always got me as in the awkward category of, are we doing this to help the children? Are we doing this because why? And there's sometimes I have to say to my colleagues, we're not medical professionals. Somebody's life is not on the line if I don't enter, one piece of data. You've got to get a bit of perspective. At the end of the day, what's the most important thing? It's those children sitting in front of us and the person teaching them is in a place to teach them. So there's a little bit of that sometimes where I think all of this other stuff gets in the way of the most crucial and critical thing we're there to do. And that is to teach the children. And I think it's got to be about balance. You have to do all those other things, the bureaucratic stuff, and you've got to make sure you're able to do what the modern teaching job is, but you still got to be able to stand in front of those children and deliver the best quality lessons.
So we have that as the priority, obviously. It's
got to be.
Yeah. So I always think kind of relationships the priority, right to the front of everything. Having a great relationship with a group, individuals, all stakeholders is always kind of puts you on the right foot. But do you think that some of those systems, if they were completely gone, would then have a negative impact on other things working in the school? I mean, I come from a kind of business management background. I have worked in the private sector, which I do recommend for anyone thinking about kind of joining the profession. I think having a different perspective before joining the profession could be kind of very important, because sometimes I do see this kind of lock-in sometimes of people who have only ever kind of worked in a school. It would be nice to kind of get that experience outside before you join teaching, if that's possible for people. Because actually what you do see sometimes is you can step outside of the what you just said about bureaucratic nonsense and actually think, well, actually, those things are required for the whole organisation. for things to kind of be monitored and checked and have these kind of processes around
So quality assurance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it's important to note, because I have this kind of argument kind of regularly, that quality assurance, remember, is meant to be a culture of quality. Whereas I think, unfortunately, for a lot of schools, they fall into what we call quality control, which is kind of checking or actually kind of going in and actually flicking over individual pages of individual books. I see that as quality control, not quality assurance. If you can get a good culture in a school, you're looking at quality assurance. Kind of allows a culture of, well, everybody's ultimately going to be going in the same direction of a certain process. And that's very difficult. I'm not kind of making light of that in any way. I understand that it's a difficult thing, especially with rotation of staff. And, as you said, the whole system has so many variables within it all the time that it's not the same as doing quality assurance on a production line, or doing something like
But I
that.
can't. This is the thing. I struggle with a lot of that because I'm a professional. I'm an academic. I know what I'm doing. I don't need micromanaged.
Yeah.
I don't need somebody who's read a book saying, "Oh, you don't know what you." I can well self-effacing, more than reflective, and more than intelligent enough to be able to fix the things myself.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit of the big brother sometimes kicks in, and it makes a start. What I think drives a lot of teachers crazy is that, we know what we're doing. You got to trust us. And this little bit, that level of bureaucracy. And yes, you need quality assurance, but it can be so onerous and so intrusive that it can stifle creativity.
Yeah.
It can stifle somebody's happiness and welfare, because you can then take out the thing that makes them not good. And I've struggled with that sometimes because I'm a bit free and loose. And I like my freedom. I don't like when somebody says, "Here's a script of how you teach children."
Yeah.
And I teach in a religious school, and I've often turned around and says, Jesus didn't stand up at the top of the Sermon on the Mount and says, "Okay, my lesson objective today is to feed 5,000 people." I look at the great teachers in history. Socrates didn't have a lesson plan. Somebody didn't check Socrates as kind of like check his notes. Good teachers know what they're doing instinctively because they're good teachers.
Yeah.
It's when you often get them being double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked, that they start to doubt themselves. And I've seen that happen where people get burnt out because they're put into these stifling systems which destroy their creativity, destroy the thing they love the most, which is the freedom. And equally, you should be allowed to make mistakes within our profession because that's the whole point of it. We encourage the children to make mistakes, but it has become a bit like high stakes culture. It's important that we get it right with the children, but part of it is you have to sometimes take risks, take chances. It doesn't work out, then you reflect on it and you fix it. But that's up to you to do that rather than. And I think there's some trusts are different from others. I think within teaching now, there doesn't seem to be a standard between one place or another. What culture there is in one school doesn't seem to prevail in others.
Yeah.
So that's what you have. You have a very complicated situation where you're seeing some people who are able to cope with some systems, and maybe that's why some staff move around quite a bit to find that school and find that trust and to find that place where they fit, so that they're able to then say, "Oh, I like the culture here." Because some people don't mind being micromanaged. Some people don't mind being told what to do. I could think of nothing else worse than be told what to do. It's just not in my DNA. I don't like it. I don't like to be sort of like told what to do. I prefer that somebody gives me suggestions and said, "Here's the things we'd like you to do, and these are the things we think you should do," and leave it up to me, and then let me have a go at it, and then come back to them later on and go, "Actually, you know what? That suggestion you made to me, that was a really good idea." And I think sometimes it's about how it's phrased, isn't it? It's how it's phrased and how it's coaxed in. Because I don't do 60+ hour weeks because I'm forced to, because somebody is bureaucratically shackling me. I do them because I tend to enjoy, and that was a hard week last week, but I got more out of last week than I got negatively. But I've had to work hard at somehow overriding those horrible negative things, like 1,800 pieces of data. Wow, that really enthused me. I really couldn't wait to get those done. I mean, that's not what I come in to be teaching to
No.
be doing, is
But
inputting
just to
1,800 pieces
flip
of data.
just to flip it, because we've both got children in school. Mine is slightly older than yours, Brent. I know as a parent, if the data we get sent home is as accurate as it can be, it can really help us as parents, develop our own children as well at home. So I'm not completely against data, because I think, so as a parent, kind of getting that feedback from the school, as long as it's done in a way that we can understand and we can process, has been very helpful. For example, my youngest daughter, we were able to use that data to support her with her reading and spelling and that type of thing. Once we got that kind of accurate data from her school, so it can be a very positive thing, to be sent that data. And again, it's probably about relationships as well, being able to have a quick communication with parents, we have teachers sending messages home to parents. Again, it's a bit like how we talk to the pupils. If we can give them feedback as soon as possible, almost in a small sense,
Yeah.
and they can develop that very, very quickly on a kind of almost like on a chunks level. It has massive benefits. I guess the difficulty is a quantity, isn't it? It's quantity. So I'm fortunate at the minute where I have classes that are kind of average around kind of 20 students. But I have done before, like you've done, the 35 year sevens where I've had five lessons of year seven a week, and I think that's when it becomes challenging to have that personal response to a pupil when you've just got an absolute kind of massive data drop to do.
397 children.
I guess to try and do that, you try and find, I guess, workarounds, don't you?
Well,
And that's when some of that quality of what it's intended to do goes. I think
it does because
yeah.
out of exhaustion.
Yeah.
I have 397 children, and inside those 397 children, they're all unique.
Yeah.
And I have children with extreme difficulties. I have children with all sorts of issues. And I have to know not only their data, I have to know what works for one. I'll put it like this. Jurgen Klopp manages a team of 22, 23, a squad of 25 players, and he'll know maybe 15 or 16 young lads.
Yeah.
And he knows all about them, and he knows the different techniques. He knows to train one player one way and train another. Imagine Jurgen Klopp at a team of 397 kids.
Yeah.
This is what you're up against.
Yeah.
And they all have different needs, and they all have come from different backgrounds, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses. And you've got to find a way to get the best out of those 397 children across 4 different subjects. And you only see them, some of them, once or twice a week.
Yeah.
It's absolutely phenomenal when you consider, that some of as you say, the classroom teachers that teach the 30 children, 32 children.
Mm.
And what worries me is that I do get to know, and I've got a brilliant relationship with the children, and that's why I've stayed at the school I'm at, because it is a smaller school. But at being a smaller school, you end up doing multiple roles because there just isn't the people to fill those other roles. So you end up being a jack of all trades. So, an example this week is for the first time I taught physics. Now, I have not studied physics until 1994. So I'm just glad that Newton, Ohm, and gravity still do it still. Because if it's not, I was in big trouble. But I was asked because, and again, it's that, would you do us a favour? You're a geographer by background trade, even though I'm a head of history now. I'm teaching some English to Key Stage 3. And now, because of the fact we can't get scientists, I'm teaching some science. And I was apprehensive. I was nervous because I'm going in and haven't done something before. And I literally looked at the kids and they realised, actually, what am I talking about? I know these children. I taught these children in year 7. I taught some of them in year 8. I taught some in year 9. And my high of the week, my funny part of the week was one of the boys just looked at me and went, "Sir, you're my physics teacher." "You what?" And I went, "What's the last thing I taught you? You taught me Hitler in year 9, sir." And I'm like, So this kid's going from me teaching him about Hitler in year 9 to me teaching him about electrical resistance. And he must be thinking, what's going on here? But then he looks at me and goes, he knows what he's going to get. He knows he's going to get the same type of behavior, same person. So the relationship is there. And as he started the lesson, that he turned around and I says, where's your exercise book? And he goes, my exercise book's at home. And East Midlands people drop the H. I know it's not that I'm ever going to criticize people for accents or anything, like, not that I have a leg to stand on, Fulham and Fulham and all that. Hey. But here's how it goes. This kid, the first thing he says to me is, I haven't got my book. It's at home, sir. And what was the lesson on? My first ever physics lesson was Ohm's law. So, of course,
Perfect.
Dad joke 101.
Yeah.
I ran with that. I absolutely ran with that and went, we're doing Ohm's law today. He went, Ohm's law. I went, no, Ohm's law. And then we had that almost like, what do you call that? The Who band joke, the Who band joke. Yeah. And literally back and forth for like 30 seconds until some of the other kids caught on, because on the board was Ohm's law.
They got it.
And they finally got it. And then you realise the ice was broken. I was less nervous. And something I'd never taught before, as I started off, I was absolutely petrified. And it's not normal for me, because I normally chuck me in. But even I got sort of like, oh my gosh, I'm out of my comfort zone. What happens if the kids find me out? I felt like an NQT all over again. Yeah. Because it was like, I had that nervousness about, oh gosh, I'm out of my comfort zone. But then afterwards, I realised that's what we have to do all the time. We have to get out of comfort zones. We're chucked in the deep end. And sometimes you just got to go and run with it. And for some people, that's difficult within teaching, but they find a way, and that's what we pass on. And it turned out to be a good lesson. And in the end, one of the children sort of left and were like, sir, how often have we got you? Only once every 2 weeks. Oh, okay. And I was looking going, did like more of my physics lesson. And that was me. I felt like £1 million that I'd somehow out of nowhere, from 1994's physics I was taught by Mr. Savage. Thank you, Mr. Savage, if you're listening. Was also my judo instructor. I never realised that a judo instructor could be a physics teacher, but then when you're talking about forces and pivoting, probably was onto something. But that's the thing. And I felt absolutely brilliant. And when I come home that night and my wife asked me, how did your day go? I went, I taught physics today. And I was like a kid in a sweet cookie jar going, I've done it. I taught physics today. And I felt so good about myself because I'd literally done something I'd never done before, and I actually got away with it. And realised I felt a bit stupid about myself going, why did you doubt yourself? Come on, you know this. But that's what we do, don't we? We're always sometimes chucked in, and we have to make the best of it. And maybe another person wouldn't have said yes to that, and maybe other people would have. And again, when I said to the physics teacher, she was like, oh, you'll be fine. But then I had to look at her and go, I've not done this since 1994. And she kept saying, I'll be fine. And I had to sort of think, do I admit to her that I'm going to struggle when I see equations written, and my algebra is a little fuzzy, because numbers and letters to me, numbers go one way, letters go the other. I always get a bit fuzzy when numbers and letters go together. I'm sorry if you're a mathematician. I know it's natural to you, but it doesn't come natural to me. But that's the thing. And this week I was tasked with doing something completely out of the ordinary, and I somehow got through it. And that's what we've been doing since Socrates, basically, as teachers.
So in terms of teaching outside of your qualified range, does that increase the workload?
Oh yeah,
for you, because you are now planning something that you haven't got a kind of a go to. You haven't got a cupboard in your head that goes, let's go to the physics cupboard.
True, the planning's done for me, but here's the thing: I prefer to do the planning myself. Because in doing, and that's something I've taught student teachers, is that if you're borrowing somebody else's plans, they know what they're talking about. That's like trying to read somebody else's script.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work, is it?
No.
So it's always good. It's always a good sign when I have like an NQT or a younger teacher, and I say, "There's my scheme of work," and they go off and they want to adapt it. And I'm always, you go off and you adapt it, because in doing it, it's a bit like the same as the children. If we say to the children, here's my lesson notes, take my lesson notes, but I'd rather they generate their own, because that goes into their memory more. They know that gets the fluidity.
Well, it's processing, isn't it?
But it goes back to our original point. That took time. That took brain space.
Yeah.
A little part of my brain was, I'm going to have to teach physics. A little part of my brain was ticking away like a little time bomb going, I'm nervous about this. And it was at the back of my mind, am I going to get away with this? But then a part of me is also going, who's put me in this? Why me? And then you realise, of course, why me? Because I didn't say no. Because sure, I'm the type of guy that'll go, oh yeah, chuck me in at the deep end. So it's a compliment in a way. And the person who's put me on the timetable says, oh, you'll be fine. And I felt like saying to her, stop saying I'll be fine. I am not an exhaustible resource. You know what I mean? Stop it. I will break if you will. How far can we go with this? Teach me tiddlywinks or something. But that's the thing. You often find this with some teachers. There's certain teachers who just get used a lot because they do put their heart and soul into it. And I think sometimes senior management take advantage of those good-natured teachers. Maybe some of our younger professionals are a bit like that. They're keen, they're enthusiastic, they're energetic. And I do think they get taken advantage of for their intrinsic motivation because they cannot feel like saying no. I don't know why. I just don't always like to say no. I'm a yes person. Chuck me in. I'll do it. Oh, can you do us a favor? There's the immortal words. Can you do us a favor? I am terrible at saying no to somebody. If somebody comes to me, knocks on the door, and says, "Can I take 10 minutes of your time?" I have my data to do. And I now turn around and go, no, I would rather have that 10-minute conversation and do the data. Other people would say, sorry, I'm busy, I've got, and close the door. But I think as a teacher, I think you benefit more from having those conversations. But I can't blame other people for self-protecting. And I read a good article about that called Quietly Quitting. I think there's a good show on that sometime we might want to do about definitely. This idea of quietly quitting. That people are just saying, a colleague of mine turned around recently in light of the strikes was saying, work to rule and quietly quitting. And I don't like that because our profession relies upon the intrinsic motivation and goodwill and reciprocity. You have to have appropriate relationships. You have to say to somebody, give and take. If you do this for me, can I have something else in return? And I think good schools are when people are not taken advantage of if they are givers. And I think within education, you have far too many givers sometimes, and then there are the takers. I think you got to get the balance right between those that don't get exhausted because they just don't know how to say no versus those that basically do their job and leave at 3:50. And I don't have any problem with that. But it's not fair sometimes, and the person putting into the system doesn't always get it back. I think they get it back from the children. I think you said with relationship, I think you always get it back from the children. And I think your career is probably sustained more. So I take the high of my week. One of the highs of my week was my wife had a promotion at work. She said, right, you're exhausted. We're all exhausted this week. It's been a heavy week. We're going to go down and a booked hotel. I won't mention the resort, a certain resort in the East Midlands. And we're having a night down there. And then we're going to go and have a day in a theme park. And as I was down in the theme park, I bumped into a friend of mine who I play football on a Friday night with. It was like, why would you football on Friday night? Because I'm down here. Oh, brilliant, fantastic. And 10 minutes later, I bumped into an ex-pupil who just walked over, didn't recognize him, walked over and just gave me a hug. In the middle, and I'm like, who's this? And I looked at him again and went, Jordan, hadn't taught this kid in 12 years. Told me about, how well he's been going. He's doing a degree in marine biology, and now works in a theme park, taking care of all the aquatic animals in the aquarium. And it was, if you want free, next time you come down, let me know. I'll get you free tickets. And this kid has turned out to be absolutely magnificent. And as I'm walking away, my wife just turns around and goes, "This is so typical of you. You're not even from this country, and everywhere you go, you bump into people that know you." And I'm like, yeah. Because I've taught 2,500 children down the years across, 2 different subjects mostly. And never once have I met a child that's ever turned around and says, you, and pointed the finger. They've always come back, usually apologetic, and went, I'm really sorry for how badly behaved it was. Because that's because I work really hard to build those relationships. It is exhausting.
Just in terms of maths, and according to School Week, 1 in 4 work over 60 hours a week. That would be 480 hours a term. Whoa. A half term. I got that right? Yeah, half term. That would be 1,920 hours for the year. Is that right? I think that's right. If anyone can correct me on this, I think I've kind of got that right. Is that sustainable?
For some people, it's not.
It's not, yeah.
Because it puts a strain on relationships. If you've got your marriage, children, I mean, I feel constantly guilty as a teacher sometimes, constantly guilty that I'm not spending enough time with my own children, constantly guilty that the relationships and friendships I have, I put a lot into teaching, whereas the rest for me. And it's part of my own fault because it's what we do,
Yeah, I
isn't
want to
it?
be a teacher.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And ultimately, I often think this is that I have an interest in this subject.
Yeah.
So
We're slaves to it, aren't we?
yeah, yeah. But
Addicted to it.
I kind of, yeah, and I kind of, it's my drive. It's the thing that motivates me. You know, even though, like yesterday, had a day off. Kids were at say kind of drama group. Wife was away. It was kind of me time. So I go to the gym, but I'm still listening to a podcast. And I'm still listening to the content of the course, and mid kind of podcast, I'm thinking, oh great, they've said something about this that I can say on Tuesday. So then it's like a little note to myself, you know, and all that's going on all the time. So that 60 hours is 60 hours of actually doing stuff. But again, as I said earlier, it's those little bits kind of in between that kind of add to that. So maybe we're adding kind of another, you know, 5 or so hours in terms of just us being interested in stuff, and I can't stop that.
No.
You know, I did take some time out a couple of years ago. You know, and the school that was at the time offered some sessions with counsellors and that type of thing. So I thought it was a good opportunity to kind of, have this kind of experience. And one of the things that I talked about, I think, is there a possibility of me ever being able to kind of switch off?
Yeah.
And actually, what we just, as in the discussion we had there, actually, I don't want to. That's part of who I am.
Yeah.
That's part of me. So if I stop doing that, that's part of me gone to carry on being a profession, which I decided is not something I was going to do. So therefore, I needed to look at a new job that was maybe just a bit more focused.
Yeah.
So my focus, and we'll talk about this in a minute, about maybe the spread of a teacher over different subjects. My decision is that if I can, and so far I have been very fortunate, and I'd like to, praise the management of the school I'm at the minute for kind of really seeing this, is that if you can kind of really focus on one subject, even to a point of really, if you've got a good enough team, kind of dividing stuff up into expertise slots. So businesses, for example, has, marketing, human resources, and different people will be able to bring different things to those places. I happen to be better at kind of international business and that type of thing, or not better, but I'm more intrinsically motivated to kind of, do the research and do all those kind of interesting points that go into that. So I can bring them, more naturally.
So it's round page and round hole, square page and square.
That's right. That's
right. The problem
right.
with that is you taking your funding cuts and you take what's come down the line.
Yeah.
We're just going to have bodies at the moment. And now we're so desperate in some places. People don't get to choose. People don't get don't get to sort of like, and you see the amount of people now going into supply teaching because they still get to go into schools. They still get the idea of going into schools, but they don't get all the other stuff that comes with it because that's what's killing a lot of people is the bureaucracy, the Ofsted fear, the accountability, the data entry, all this other stuff that gets in the way. And you know that. You speak to a lot of teachers, put them inside the classroom, they come alive. That's what killed us during remote teaching in COVID. I absolutely hated it. I'm an actor. I want my stage. My stage is my classroom. What good of an actor would I be if I wasn't on stage or in theatre? That's what we are as teachers. And that's the problem, is the workload needs to be managed. And a lot of it is Ofsted driven. A lot of it is micromanaging. A lot of it is quality checks, as we said. And if they removed a lot of that, then I think you'd have a happier workforce, healthier workforce. You'd have people who would want to give more hours in. But the problem is when you don't have the buy-in, people have to buy into it. People have to buy into it. People have to sort of willingly, intrinsically motivate towards it. Because it's not as if these days we're in it for the money. Because look at the money. And and I'd often be worried that if people joined the teaching profession because they wanted to earn money, that maybe unfortunately, I don't think that's the profession they should be in, because they've got to be vocational. Also, somebody said to me, our job is vocational, not vacational. You know, we are people that give, but I think the balance has gone too far. I think our good nature is being used against us for far too long, and too many good people have decided that they leave profession not because they're not capable any longer. I think for their own mental health, because they want to get off this. They want their brain space. And I felt that in my career a couple of times where, you know, I had, you know, do I go down four days a week, 3 days a week? I mean, I've got a colleague of mine who's teaching now as a normal teacher, who was a head teacher, because he just had enough. And he's, you know, I says, why have you done that? He says, I'm just happier. I enjoy teaching. Go back to where he started. And he seems a lot more content.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was, just to kind of row back a bit and get to the points of the bits that I really, really want to do. Not that I didn't like doing the other things, but it was just too much. It was just the quantity of stuff all the time. So just mention just pay quickly there, because I did hear a colleague kind of say this the other day. So I thought it was quite interesting, kind of about on the average salary. The average teacher salary at the minute is 31,000. So that gets the average around kind of £30 an hour if you talk about those hours. However, as I'm sure we're all in agreement, there's lots of colleagues that earn a lot less than that. So actually, someone was saying that I could actually earn the same at Marks and Spencer's. Yeah, which seems crazy, isn't it? Not that there's anything. I'm not criticising Marks and Spencer's, but just to work on the shop floor at Marks and Spencer's, and they're actually generally considering that as an option. Or Aldi's a classic, isn't it? That they pay slightly above the average hourly wage. Not to ever think about this as earning money for an hour, but it is something that is on people's radars as maybe I need to do this. Maybe I'm not so intrinsically motivated anymore to kind of do this. So therefore, the external motivator of pay kind of kicks in. But as we've said, like we need students in the classroom. A talk radio station really needs people to call in and contact as well. So
contact us and feedback as well. What we'll do now is we'll go to the news. I'd like to say, of course, if you are interested in being a host as well and doing as we're doing, please contact us. Teachers Talk Radio is a diverse bunch of individuals across the teaching profession and education sector who obviously have an intrinsic motivation towards talking about education. You can also listen back to some of the fantastic shows. We've had a busy schedule on Sunday, and we've got a couple of shows coming up this afternoon as well. So you can catch us on any of your Twitter spaces, on your Podbeam, and certainly you can listen back to any of these shows, download, keep, and also share. And also, I'd like to say, please call in, tune in, and talk it out. We'll go to our news now.
This episode of Teachers Talk Radio has been made possible with support from Witherslack Group, the UK's leading provider of SEN education and care. They're here to support you too through an ever-growing offer of free resources, including webinars, podcasts, articles, and events aimed at supporting teaching professionals like you. Visit their website at www.witherslackgroup.co.uk to find out more.
If you're listening to this, then we know we share one thing in common: a passion for the type of outstanding education that every child deserves. That's what makes us the leading provider of specialist education and care. We need people like you to help us achieve even more. With us, you'll be given all the resources and support you need, offered a clear path to career progression, and be rewarded with some of the best salaries and benefits the industry has to offer. We are Witherslack Group. If you'd like to find out more, we'd love to hear from you. Visit www.witherslackgroup.co.uk/careers and be part of our future.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The Scotsman reports on strike action by Scottish teachers planned to take place in the coming weeks. Scottish Education Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville has said there is no separate pot of money to fund an improved pay deal for school staff, and that any improved pay offer would involve diverting cash from other areas. Strike action was announced after recent ballots and will be the first such action for almost 40 years. School staff are due to strike on November the 24th, after members of Scotland's largest teaching union overwhelmingly voted in favour of the industrial action. The EIS union said 96% of its members backed the action via a ballot, which saw a turnout of 71%. The most recent offer of a 5% pay rise was rejected 3 months ago. Ms Somerville told the Scotsman that she was absolutely determined to try to reward staff with a pay rise closer to the 10% being sought by unions, but warned it would lead to difficult decisions in other areas. In Wales, school children have been given the green light to support their national team in the group game against Iran. The Welsh Government has agreed to let schools decide how to manage the timetables during the game, which kicks off at 10 a.m. on Friday the 25th of November. The team is in the nation's first World Cup for 64 years. The FA of Wales has organised a Football Friday for the day of the Iran game. Around 1,100 schools throughout the country are preparing for a full day of football activity. The Welsh FA has created packs including bunting, footballs, flags and posters to mark the event. Skills sessions, inter-school matches and football festivals are also planned for either side of the Iran game. Pupils in both primary and secondary schools are planning to take part in the events. FE Week focuses on the efforts of colleges across the country that have been instrumental in helping refugees from the war in Ukraine build a home away from home in the UK. Since the war began, around 7 million citizens of Ukraine have left their homes and almost 150,000 have found sanctuary in the UK. The country's colleges have dedicated their efforts to laying on ESOL courses to help refugees master English, as well as other learning opportunities designed to help Ukrainians settle in. Whilst numbers vary from area to area, some colleges have signed more than 100 Ukrainian students onto courses. And not just for ESOL. At least 1,200 students are on A-level or other post-GCSE courses. But it's not just about teaching English. College staff have also worked to provide other practical support, such as free bus passes, lunch vouchers, and loaned laptops. The full story can be found on the FE Week website. Finally, a new resource for secondary school-age pupils has been launched to encourage young people to consider a career in the veterinary professions. The British Veterinary Association has endorsed the Vet Team in a Box resource, produced by University of Liverpool. The resource is designed in line with the Key Stage 3 national curriculum and helps students participate in scenarios which aim to demystify the veterinary professions and remove perceived barriers to joining. The resource will be available later this month. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello! This week let's talk gadgets and tech that helps us teach, but also might be something to hint at for a gift in the near future. Before I start, I'd like to define tech as anything that's been made that makes a difference to how we interact with the world, usually for the better. A pencil or scissors, for example, are classed as tech in my definition. That being said, let's look at what a few internet searches have brought up as must-have tech for teachers. Mini whiteboards, a favourite of Nathan Ginn, have got to be super useful. Things to watch though is pens running out. Do you also need a cloth or a board rubber? And primary teachers don't let the kids keep them in the trays with the books. They make them look messy and get ink all over them. Interactive screens. Are you team interactive, or could you have had a big TV and spent the rest on other things? I love interactivity, but my subject lends itself to it. Are you simply presenting on an overpriced screen? Things to check out are open source interactive software that's compatible with different devices. Sometimes you can be locked in by software. Having something you can use on almost any board might be for you, especially if your school has a mixed estate of kit, and as it's open source, it will be free. The presentation clicker is a classic. Things to watch for is losing it, leaving the USB dongle behind, and also ensuring you don't use the built-in class 3 laser to blind the class. Does anyone really use a laser pointer? A webcam, a topic I've discussed in the past. A decent webcam nowadays doesn't need to be expensive and can do as much as a visualizer. Think purpose and audience, then think desk space and the number of cables needed. What about simpler gadgets? Feedback stamps. With these, I'd just be certain the way feedback is given isn't going to change before you buy them to get value for money from the stamp. Ninja pens. Is it a ruler? Is it a pen? No, it's a spirit level and also a flat and cross-headed screwdriver. It looks cool, but if you get a cheap one, don't expect to be able to unscrew anything unless what you're unscrewing is made from cheese. As always, I'd love to hear about your favourite teaching tech. Let us know at TT Radio 2022. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
So, welcome back to this Teachers Talk Radio Sunday lunch hour with me, Brent Poland, and my partner in crime, Adam Spence. And today we'll be talking about the average workload and the average week and the average day of an average teacher, which is a weird way of putting it because there is no such thing as an average teacher. But even between the two of us, we discovered, we did something similar in amount of hours, but we actually have done lots of different things this week. So I'll just take you through very quickly a kind of rundown of each day, the kind of average things that a teacher did. And I kind of just got into a habit of noting down all the different things, like arriving to school at 8 o'clock. I know some people arrive at 8:30, some people arrive at 7. I tend to like to come in late and I tend to stay a little bit later, usually because I have to run my children to school, which again, you do find car parking is quite stressful sometimes. It's not as if we have our own car parking spot. So sometimes I have to jockey for a car parking spot if I arrive a little late. I started actually on a Monday, which is really good, by doing a reflection period for the children who are in our what's called the social inclusion room. So children who've been a bit naughty. I normally take a couple of books to mark in there, but I decided to delete lots of emails, do some marking and input some data during that. And in fact, I did spend about half that reflection time having a conversation with one of the students about where they're going wrong. So again, even when I had an hour there really to do admin, I couldn't resist myself because I do teach this child and I just wanted to find out where things are going wrong. And I thought it was a really good chance to have just a general chat with the child, which I think was more valuable than anything else. The rest of the day I had GCSE history, Spanish Armada. I had PSHE, which is Pastoral Health and Social Care, and I was doing a bit cyberbullying, which is really interesting. So you go from like the Spanish Armada in one period to the cyberbullying in the next period, which is really interesting, especially with my year 8. So I've got a year 8 tutor group and trying to get them to stop being cyberbullies or being involved. And I know very well there are some children there I've had to have conversations with about what they're doing in their online activities. So I did say to them over and over again about the block facility and the delete facility. And it was quite shocking how little they knew about cyberbullying. But that was interesting. We had a fire alarm at period 5 that was set off. So that was my year 11 class disrupted. That was all about naval warfare in the 16th century. And somebody decided to put some links into the fire alarm down the PE corridor, which seems to be a thing these days. So that was fun, having an impromptu fire drill in the afternoons. That ruined my year 11 lesson.
So sorry, one of the funniest things happened to us about a year ago when our the break glass. What's it called? Is it called the fire alarm? Yeah, the break glass. We have one that's almost right next to the button that opens the door to come out, and I could see the kind of the girl leaving, and then she pressed it, and the horror on her face as she did it. But because it's like a 2-story building, and there's the students in the basement as well. We have like a basement classroom for cadets. We do all have to then leave the building, and she knew it as she'd done it, and her poor face as she pressed it. I'm surprised it broke so easily. Actually, I mean, I've never.
They are very easy.
Yeah,
to break,
I've never broke one. Have you ever broke one?
I'm staying quiet.
The rebellious Brent at school.
I didn't, as I say, have the easiest of childhoods. So yes, I'm going to stay quiet and plead the Fifth Amendment on that. But yeah, I did the photocopy for the week.
Yeah.
So without nobody being there. That's what I tend to do, so I can get the photocopier done. And I also try to produce a timetable. This is something that I need to do next week that I didn't get to do this week. I had to produce a timetable because I'm planning to get 3 year groups out on Thursday and Friday to plant 420 trees.
That's good.
So I have from the Green Canopy project, which was Late Majesty the Queen's idea with David Attenborough. If you still actually do it, they will give you free trees to plant on grounds or anywhere.
Yeah.
But the only problem is they come in large batches.
That was part of her Jubilee.
That was part of her Jubilee.
Yeah, that's right.
And me being the eco guy that I am, just went to the head teacher. Can we, anywhere you want to put 420 trees? He's like, yeah, we've got lots of flooding down there. What transpires is I did a timetable, and then on the Friday, Monday afternoon decided to walk down to where we were going to plant them, and realised there was no point to that timetable because where I was going to plant them was flooded already, which actually is contradictory to the side of the fact I need to plant the trees to stop the flooding, but I can't plant the trees at the moment because it's currently flooded. The irony is palpable. So that's a little job I have to do next week.
But that's one of those things, isn't it, that you think, you get really excited about. So this is what I'm going to do this week.
Yep.
And then you realise a couple of hours into the planning of it, and there's kind of... Because I guess in most jobs, that would be the job for a bit, wouldn't it? If you're project managing, doing that, you'd manage that for a week, 2 weeks, or whatever, that'd be your job. But you're shoehorning that into these things that you're talking about.
I'm a history teacher, and somehow now I'm a groundskeeper. But don't get me wrong, our grounds team are fantastic, and they and I will do this. We're talking about getting strimmers out and plows out. And the time I had finished, it was going to be like a full blown construction site, when all that's probably needed is a couple of stakes in the ground and a couple of shovels. But me being me, I was like, oh, okay, we'll put them there. I had this grand vision. But I just need to get the kids out and start planting them. Yeah. But they're sitting in a dark, cool place at the moment, waiting to be planted. And the last thing I want to do is to have those 420 beautiful trees. Yeah. And again, I have a nice idea of every child plants in the year, plants the tree and gives it a name. And then they've done their little bit of environment. But again, it's that brain space of outside my box.
That's right.
This is something completely outside my skill set. But I come to school and I'm thinking about where I'm going to plant 420 trees. And my head teacher's brilliant. He's like, whatever you need, you just go plant them down there somewhere. And he's like, because his brain space is probably filled up with 50,000 things. And the last thing in his mind is, where is Brent going to put his 420? He just wants to come along and say, that down there, we planted 420 trees. Who did that? Yeah, that guy there did that. Because that's all part of it, isn't it? And we work together, and I need to co-opt people into being enthusiastic about borrowing their kids for a period, going like, would you like not to be teaching cooking today? So I had a couple of teachers who volunteered, but I needed to go back to them and say, look, the current conditions aren't there, and we won't have the prep done in time. We'll get to it in the next week or two. Yeah. So, but that was something that, again...
I wish I had a buzzer every time you kind of mention a different skill. So you talk about, co-opting different members of staff,
persuasion,
cooperation, negotiation,
compromise,
project management, compromise. These are things. I mean, sometimes you do speak
groveling.
You do speak to teachers, and they kind of, especially older teachers, thinking, they stay in the profession because they don't think they've got any transferable skills. But how valuable are all those? Lots of organisations all the time. So again, I think, if you sat there on the Sunday thinking, crikey, what do I do? Well, just list all these kind of fantastic things that you do all the time. And going through this process, maybe write it down now as you're at home. Get a little notepad and just think about all these different things that you balance during the day. And you'll feel great going into the next week.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So that was Monday. I left school at 6, went home and did 2 more hours of data entry. Woohoo! Data entry! So, we love data entry. Came to school at 8:25. I was pushing it on Tuesday. I left at 6. So again, same time. I had to do my tutor group. Did my science lesson for the first time. And it's interesting. I did science, physics in an RE humanities teaching block. So you have a non-specialist historian teaching science in an RE room. Gotta love it. Gotta love the ability to do that. Yeah.
I love the juxtaposition science and religion as well.
Well, they're always trying to search for the higher power. Don't get me on the Star Trek and Star Wars. I love my Star Trek and my Star Wars. And again, then I was back to history doing some year 8s and back to year 9 history doing some Treaty of Versailles and some Elizabeth and back to my GCSE. So I had history 3 lessons in a row, which is great.
Yeah.
But in 2 different rooms. So I had to float around different rooms. So I've got my own room for most of my lessons, but I do use other rooms as well.
Yeah.
And I always find that quite hard because you're going into a room and kids are already there and you haven't got your resources and you've got to really think about what books do I need. And that's what we had that during COVID, which is really, again, people don't realize that some teachers don't always have their own room and their own teaching space, and some do. And in some schools, they have, they're almost hot desking, aren't they? And it's really difficult. It's really difficult when you're having to go into different rooms for different subjects and carry everything with you. And of course, the child will go, "Have you got a pen, sir?" And you're thinking, "I don't know where the pens are in this." "Sir, have you got this?" And you go, "I don't know." It really catches you off guard, doesn't it, when you don't know the layout?
Yes, I mean, it's crazy sometimes. Like you've actually worked in the same school for 20 years, but there's some classrooms you've never ever been in. And then you're almost thinking, what's going on here? Where is the cupboard? Where is the drawer? Where is the stuff? I mean, that really just throw you off, actually.
But the kids look at you, and they use this room all the time.
Yeah,
and they're looking at you going like, "Where's my book?" And you're going, "Where is my book?" I don't know. And I know I have a system where the kids put their book. I take their books back and I put it in one place in my classroom, and it's clearly labelled. There is a place for every. I even color code year 7, year 8, and year 9.
Yeah.
Red, purple, yellow. So I even got a color coded system, and there'll still be one child that puts his book in the wrong place. And I'll pick up the pile of books, take them to the lesson, and there's always one going, "I've not got my book, sir." And I'm like, "Right, check your bag." "Oh, it's in my bag." And I'm like, "Oh, for God's sake." And they look at you as if like, your book is the most important thing to me, which is probably like my head teacher about those trees going, "Do you think the 423 is the most important thing? We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, dude. You know what I mean?"
Yeah.
Put the trees and plant them down there. I budget them. And it's again like the child turns around to me and is like, "Where's my book, sir?" And I'm like, "Why?
Yeah.
I teach 397 children.
I could do with your help here to find the book.
Take control of your own book." And it gets like that.
All I ask you to do is get to the room and get a book out. Think about what I've had to do in that time.
Exactly, but you don't, because then it's kind of, you have to have systems and routines and systems and routines. And sometimes when you're out of kilter a little bit, and this happens in the life of a normal teacher, where they're in unfamiliar rooms or they're thrown into an unfamiliar situation, and then a child who just ice skates uphill or paddles a canoe in a circle, using one paddle. You're like, "Help us." I mean, it's that scene from Jerry Maguire, when he breaks down and he's going to Cup of Golding Jr. "Help me, help you. Help me to help you." And you feel like that sometimes as a teacher with the children going, "I am not in my classroom. I don't know where the resources are. I'll try and find out." And it's really tricky. So that was a bit of a head spinner, having a couple of different rooms and multiple different subjects. After school, round a couple of parents, emailed all staff about union matters, booking staff for a chat on Wednesday to be able to have a chat with them. So somewhere, again, I must have had about 10 different conversations about the upcoming strike action. And funny enough, I was able to use the conversation I had on a previous show with Kevin Courtney, basically feeding back what Kevin Courtney said to me on Teacher Talk Radio, I may add, plug. And literally, all those conversations happen in the corridors, happen at break time, happen at lunchtime. And I thought, why don't I just say to everybody, I'm here on a Wednesday afternoon during lunchtime. I'm in my room, pop in and have those conversations with me all at once. And I did see 3 people popped in and had the same conversation.
It's definitely filling people's kind of cognitive load at the minute, isn't it? People thinking about this, because I think we said before, there isn't. It's a very uneasy situation for teachers to be in. We said before, we want to be in front of students in the classroom, and to have this kind of on the horizon, having thought, people are questioning their kind of own motives, own morals. Should they be involved? Should they look at the greater good? Going on strike, would that be a long-term benefit? If we did it, what would it affect? How will it impact? We all have this kind of guilt. I think there's definitely a guilt cloud that's kind of coming over us. And it's going to be very difficult for some people. Some people might find it very easy to process, but there's a nervousness, there's an anxiety. Nobody. I've never striked in my whole career. So I've got to think about kind of that. I guess a lot of people are kind of processing that at the moment, but yeah, listen back to the show with Kevin.
Yeah.
I think he did really well. You can grab that on Podbean. Just search for
Lucy's show on Tuesday night was fantastic
Yeah.
as well, because it brings me on to my head teacher. Because I always have these impromptu conversations with my head teacher, which are usually like, how are things, as they bridge between the staff and the teachers. That's part of my job in school as a union rep, is to be the kind of like grease the wheels. So I just went to him at the end of school with a cup of tea and talked budget, talked trees, talked staff welfare, talked about a Section 48 inspection. As a religious school, we were on notice now for our religious inspection as part of our Catholic life of our school. And then the strike, we had a general conversation, how our staff and equally, how is he? How's the head teachers? So we had a good impromptu meeting. It wasn't scheduled, but I felt that a couple of things I wanted to have a chat with him, and equally a couple of things he wanted to chat with me. But again, that's not, where's that in my job description? Where's that in the average life of a teacher? Some will do that, some won't do that. But that's become a bit of my impromptu job in school, which I've fallen into. But I don't mind doing that, because it's part of my role as a volunteer, rep within school. And it's those things that you don't always budget for. My wife will say, why were you late home today? And I said, well, late home today because I had a 15-minute conversation with the head teacher about these things. Oh, okay. And I didn't budget for that in my timekeeping, but equally I felt it was appropriate to seek out the head teacher and have those conversations in order to basically put some people's minds at ease and see where he's at, where we're at, but also just going forward, it's a good thing to do. I go home, went home, and then I did go home at 6 o'clock at night, and then spent another, after 2 hours with my children, getting them to bed, everything else, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 2 hours of data entry. Yes, data entry was that kind of week. Wednesday, same again, 8 o'clock in staff wellbeing. Spoke to staff about a couple of union matters, again, on the back of what we were just saying. Logged a couple of my concerns, which are about, safeguarding. Logged a couple of punishments in the previous day. Had to do a cover lesson. It wasn't a cover lesson I wanted to do, but I realised that the supply staff that came into school just wasn't really going to cut the mustard. So I sat in my classroom, which was going to be used for a cover lesson, to support the cover staff, because basically if I wasn't there, I think the children would have ate the cover staff alive. I thought, well, I might as well stay here and do some data entry while
just support
the support staff, the cover staff. Again, English lessons. I taught a couple of English lessons, literacy, and of mice and men. The interesting thing with the mice and men was we were doing that controversial couple of paragraphs about the use of the likes of the N-word and what and it was quite interesting as a non-specialist trying to teach of mice and men. But I used my history skill there, and the idea of history context, and I was able to do that because I am an historian and I know the context of 1930s America. But again, it's another example of a non-specialist being used and somehow getting away with it because the non-specialist has got enough skills. I just worry that in other schools, maybe they're doing that, and maybe that's where the children aren't getting it. And not going forward, I do think this is going to become the norm. I think staff are going to have to fill in. And I'm seeing lots of reports about some subjects in some schools being dropped because they just can't get the teachers and funding. So I think what point is staff are going to have to be more flexible about what they teach and their specialisms, because as shortages happen, people are going to have to be, it's that old mantra of school will say you're there as a teacher rather than there as a teacher of a subject, which is a bit different, isn't it? And
I mean, is that possible to create a team of general teachers? I mean,
primary school are laughing at us right now because that's what they do, and I think they're amazing. I think they're absolutely amazing for that ability that they have. I think primary school teachers are. I mean, I'm always in awe of them. I think they're absolutely amazing for their ability to do that. But secondary is a bit different, isn't it? I think there's always two types of teachers in secondary school: those that, like myself, would happily teach other subjects and give it a go, versus those that are like, I'm just a teacher of this. That's it.
But I'm just as you're saying it, I'm just wondering if there's a solution in that. Is that secondary schools almost become like primary schools? and the expectation is that they do stay with a teacher or a team of teachers. So they're almost like 5 teachers around 50 kids, and
I would love that.
they don't move with it.
If you talk about building relationships,
That's right. Yeah.
Some of the closest relationships I've built with some children, and I remember a class, it was my first year of teaching. I had a set of children for both geography and history, and I took them for both subjects. So there was about 7 or 8 children who I saw all the way through from year 7 to year 11, all the way to key stage 4 as well. And by the end of it, it was an amazing experience. And the impact I had on those children, I still see some of them now.
Yeah.
And I saw one of them recently at his father's funeral, ironically, because his father became a good friend of mine. And literally, he was remarking and not going like, gosh, we saw a lot of you. And you sort of realize, wow, when you see, I think our problem sometimes is seeing the children too less to try and do too much over with 1 or 2 periods a week. I think it's again, like if you're a football trainer, if you're training to be a top footballer, you wouldn't be training 1 hour a week, would you?
No.
With one trainer.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a musician, you don't do 1 hour, 2 hours a week. I think the way our curriculum is, and we did experiments in the past about this with 2-week timetables, and some schools do that. Some schools do like a term of one subject and then a term of another subject. But I think there's definitely something within that about the amount of contact time you have with the children, and if you could do it across multiple disciplines. I think what I'm saying is the more I teach the children across multiple disciplines, the stronger the relationship is. And I provided the evidence that earlier on when I taught a child as a history teacher in year 9, and I now all of a sudden was a physics teacher in year 10, and straight away I didn't have to work at that.
Yeah.
They knew it was me. They know it's my standard. They knew that although the subject might be different, but I'm still me.
Yeah.
But that's because I established all of that by teaching them something different. And even they remarked at the end of it wasn't I was just teaching science the same way I was teaching. I would have taught history.
Yeah.
And yes, the subject was different, but the art should be similar, shouldn't it? Really, what we're trying to do should be similar, shouldn't it?
Well, it's definitely an interesting point. Maybe we can investigate that in a couple of weeks. What might a new school look like if we had to kind of reimagine
Design from scratch?
If we literally kind of could stop tomorrow and reset. So what day are we on now? We are
Wednesday.
Wednesdays.
So got to Wednesday. That's true Wednesday. I had break duty. Had to punish a child at break duty because he thought he was Peppa Pig.
Okay,
He decided to dance in muddy puddles and kick water over everybody else.
Okay.
So he deserved to be. And the worst part of that was one of my lows of the week. Was I watched this child do it.
Yeah.
And then I got over to him. And was like, okay, I'm sorry, you're out of order. Lunchtime detention for that.
Yeah.
Just, come on, you're kicking water over people. And then it was the reaction of he tried to gaslight me. It's as if I hadn't seen it. It's like, no, it wasn't me. It was like, hello, I saw you. No, you didn't. It wasn't me. I was like, I saw, and it's that. And a lot of my colleagues were saying this week, there's a definite gaslighting going on with people's needs. And I'm going to sound very middle-aged here, but is it? Or are our children just getting a little bit more? Yeah, it wasn't me.
Yeah, well, it's a way out, isn't it?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to forgive me for it. I'm a bit of an argumentative type person myself, but even I back in the day, like if I was saw doing something, you'd go, it was me. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
But you blatantly, and I had that later on in the week with another student who had an aerosol, put it in their coat pocket, and I could actually smell the aerosol. I could see that they put it in their jacket pocket. And I was like, could I have that, please? What can you have? What? The aerosol. I haven't got it. You're like, oh, come on, really? I could smell it. I've seen anything. 2 of my senses have just told me I've seen this thing and I'm smelling this thing. And again, this is the life of a normal teacher. These arguments that you have and these constant sort of like, oh my word, come on, no. And it's not, if they just handed it to me, it'd be done and dusted and I'd say, right, I've got a confiscated job, don't forget about it. But it's this argument that they have and power play that they have. And of course I'm going to go, I know you've got it. Fine. I've got to give you, I had to have them removed to be searched to then find it because as I said earlier on in the week, somebody had set off a fire alarm with an aerosol. So we've got to make sure people haven't got aerosols to set off fire alarms, which is a bit ridiculous. But there I am following the school rules, and there's a child who's arguing with me about something, and they were so convincing. I'm even doubting myself, going, no. Do you know what I mean? And they are brilliant at it.
They are brilliant at it, yeah.
And this is a new thing. And that again, that's another thing we could explore. But this is the life of a normal teacher. The constant arguing or niggling. So it drains you. It really
it does, yeah.
It really drained me.
Yeah.
And it affected the rest of that lesson because I'm fuming that why? I have to look at the rest of the children and go, not their fault, it's not their fault, but it's taken 10 minutes of a lesson. And I think to myself, all I had to do, maybe I should have ignored it. And you have that thing of like, maybe I should have ignored it. No, but I'm not going to ignore it. I've seen it.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm playing into their hands. And you think to yourself, but that's what you have to do as a teacher.
Yeah,
so you have to draw your line.
You got to challenge kind of poor behaviour for the greater good.
Exactly. You take one for the team. So and I know a member of staff came and supported me with that, but then they sort of removed the situation. The actual English teacher who often teaches that class as well. Yeah. Then a bus duty, which went on to 3.
I just want to kind of explore the Peppa Pig analogy. What animal would you be in that that situation?
Digging up the road. I'm always digging up the road. Digging up the road.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of, isn't there? Sorry, it's been a long time since I've watched Peppa Pig, but isn't the teacher like a
wildebeest?
Wildebeest or something.
Oh, she's French wildebeest.
French wildebeest.
Yeah.
So what would you be?
I don't know. I'm more of a. I don't really like watching Peppa Pig because she's usually very horrible to her daddy.
Oh, okay.
She's on the banned list at the moment.
Yeah.
Peppa Pig's no.
Right,
I'm not a big fan because she's not very nice. She's not very nice, Peppa Pig, to be honest with you. But that's a hypothetical. Right, I had bus duty. Then after bus duty, I actually had a crossover of parents' evening. So I went from bus duty at 3:40 to a parents' evening face-to-face for the first time. So first time we've got back to normal, we're back to COVID, face-to-face. It was brilliant. But basically from 3:45, and I get this, I had a full whack of lessons, dealing with all that. And then I have 3:40, straight after school. I have 5 minutes between to have a lemon muffin and a can of Diet Sprite, which is provided by the school, but thank you very much. And I have 5 minutes between the end of the bus duty, because the bus was late, as happens, to parents' evening at 3:45. And I have to go from 3:45 to 6:30. 29 parents every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
After a 6-period day. After somebody who argued me about an hour or so. After having a 5-minute break at the end of the day. And of course I got home and I was absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
The parents' evening was fantastic. The parents are amazing. I don't disagree with having a face-to-face. I love it. And it's very, brilliant to have the feedback from the parents as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it is essential. But on a 5-period day with bus duty, break duty, no lunch because I was meeting people with the union, I was absolutely, completely knackered. I taught 120 children, 150 children that day across three different subjects, and then bus duty, no break, and then straight into a parents' evening. And then, of course, 8 till 10 o'clock that night, data entry. Thursday. Now, Thursday was special. I always do what's called an act of worship. It's our assembly. And our assembly is what we call our act of worship. And it's assembly, but it has to have a religious twist, being a faith-based school. But I've always done the historical days. My colleague and I, my old colleague, used to be the head of history, who was my mentor for years. He always did this act of worship. So I always feel quite privileged that I get to do this act of worship, like I get to do the Holocaust Memorial Day. Yeah. I always do the Holocaust Memorial Day on 27th of January. I'll always do the St. Patrick's Day, St. David's Day, St. Andrew's Day. I'll always do the historical motive, like, for instance, the anniversary of 9/11, the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I did a special act of worship for that. Mm-hmm. So I've always treated this with quite reverence and respect, that I get to do the Remembrance Day act of worship. But that took a bit of planning. And I got some of the kids to sing "Pack Up Your Troubles" in your old kit bag. Mm-hmm. And I got them to sing "It's a Long Way to Tipperary." Yeah. And the group of kids that did that actually did this for a concert we did in March. It was June, for Ukraine. So we earned about £4,000 on an evening raising money for the Ukrainian refugees. It was amazing. These kids got up and sung "Zombie" by the Cranberries at that concert. Mm-hmm. But this group of young people did the medley of 2 songs of World War One. So they start off with "Pack Up Your Troubles," like a cappella, "Pack Up Your Troubles." Yeah. So they're singing "Pack Up Your Troubles" along with "A Long Way to Tipperary." Yeah. So they're at a sing.
Brilliant.
Oh, they were amazing. So I got that recorded, What the theme I was looking at was, of course, I was looking at the empire, because we've had a bit of problems recently with diversity. So I was looking at soldiers of the empire, and I used, and if because Tom is there, he's probably seen this. I used Peter Jackson's colorization of the World War One footage. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, it is absolute. There's a scene in it where there's a young lad, and what I got the children to do was I had year nines in there, and the youngest soldier to fight in World War One was 13. The youngest soldier to die was 14, and I had 14-year-olds in the hall, and it was quite powerful to ask the 14-year-olds to stand up. So during the very start, it says, okay, so I've got some year nine boys here, but all who are 13 years old, stand up. You're the same age as the youngest participant in World War One. Remain standing, you're 14 years old. There's quite a few of the boys still standing.
Yeah.
They were the age that the youngest soldier died in. And you think, I'm a middle-aged guy. You know, I'm a middle-aged guy delivering this act of worship. Those children were closer in age to those young men that died in the war than I am.
Yeah, very powerful.
Oh, it was they get it because it relates to them. And when I've taken the kids over to Ypres and I've taken them to the Menin Gate, it's always the most powerful thing that you do when you take them. There's a very famous grave of a young boy called V.J. Strudwick. And V.J. Strudwick was in that it's in Flanders Field, the poppies grow, and McRae has his very famous cemetery, but in there is the grave of a 15-year-old.
Yeah, I've never been.
It's the most amazing school excursion I've ever taken, and I've done it a couple of times. The Menin Gate, when they play the last post at the Menin Gate, you just get the shivers going down your spine. And it's the Belgians that do it. You know, they've done it every night since the liberation in World War One. And of course, they weren't allowed to do it during World War Two. But the first day they were liberated after World War Two, they got and they do it. So it's very sacred. And the beautiful thing about it is the irony of me as an Irishman delivering that. And I do make the point as well about that World War One, World War Two. My grandfather and great uncles, were involved in those. My great uncle died. He was 19. He was in the army 6 weeks. His first big mission was Operation Market Garden. Yeah, and he was he's buried in Niederwerth Cemetery in Holland. So it's all about that, making it relevant. Yeah, making it relevant to the children. And that's quite exhausting.
Yeah.
Put the effort into creating that, and then worrying about it, and then pulling it all together for like a 20-minute assembly. But it's worth it because I don't get any bonus for that. I do it because it's part of the heritage and culture of the school. Yeah. And the expectation is, it's funny, it's not the senior management that do it. It's not, anyway, I'm not senior management. I'm the history teacher. But it's beholden within our school that the history department takes care of that because it's probably best coming from.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with our colleagues that do drama and PE as well. Think about the hours they put in at the weekends for the school performances. We often forget those types of things as well, don't we? That kind of, again, adding to the 50 hours that they've already done.
Yeah.
It's in addition, and it's because they want to do it. It's about that kind of intrinsic want to do it. That's the reason they came into the profession, to do these things.
To make that difference.
To make the difference, to make the difference.
To make that emotional connection. And then I've got to go and do the rest of the day. I had history lessons, English lessons that day. I had kids doing year 11s doing some exam work on Queen Elizabeth and the Spanish Armada. And then after school, I had my booster session with year 11s. I have a little session with them after school where I make them a cup of tea. So I have a little kettle. I've got the kitchen next door. We sit down and have a cup of tea and a cup of biscuits, and I find out how they are. And sometimes it's just basically to see how their mental health is.
Yeah, good.
So, and how they're doing, and a bit of a catch up, because my history curriculum is so condensed and so content led that I do need the extra time. But it's also a little bit of how are they doing, and it's that relationship building as well. Hot chocolate, cup of tea, cup of coffee, and sometimes they want to have a conversation with you that they couldn't have during the rest of the school. But in the meantime, I was booked into a meeting with the sustainability coordinator for the whole trust as part of trees and everything else, because one of my little jobs that I've taken on is to be the sustainable coordinator for the school, part of my UPS. So that's my kind of UPS target, which I don't mind doing. But again, when I look at other people doing UPS target, which is like do a CPD on this, I've kind of typically taken on more than I wanted, but I feel it's worth it. but I had a meeting at the same time. I had kids doing this, so I had to run down to this meeting with the school chaplain online with the trust sustainability coordinator while I've got 20 kids in my history room doing an after school booster session. And I'm thinking, I'm doing a meeting while also running out of a meeting after marking some people's work about, the importance of navy in the 16th century, while running down to a corridor going, yes, we're doing some water recycling, and then running back up the corridor, go back to the room, going like, oh, you kids all right? I mean, and you think that's what you're doing, aren't you? You're spinning plates, trying to do two things at once because you're trying to do as many things as possible to make a difference. So that was Thursday. Friday at the same assembly to a different set of kids. Some of the governors were in to watch that, which is really, really good. I had one of those weird things called a free. So I had a free on Friday.
Dun, dun, dun.
Which I then used to measure out where the 423
It's like a building with a punchline. You've almost created almost the perfect standard routine. Then I think they call that a callback joke.
Yeah, I did.
From earlier.
I did, but there we go.
Friday. Did we end on a high on Friday?
We did. We did end in a high on Friday. I had my year 10s, which I love, and we did some Hitler in the Munich Putsch, and went home early by my standards.
Just like the idea, a bit of Hitler.
History teacher teaching the Third Reich. I mean, it doesn't get any more interesting than that. Especially the Munich Putsch is an interesting one, actually. And I left about 4:30, which was early for me. After deleting all the emails I didn't want to read, which I didn't bother really, and making 2 phone calls to parents in the tutor group. And my wife then had the surprise straight down to the theme park, and then I had a day and a half where I haven't thought about teaching.
Brilliant.
So that was my week.
Whee! And we're through. What a week.
Not normal in some ways, but normal in other ways.
I bet it is. I bet actually, if you kind of kept a log of this, it's probably more normal than you think, because you just fill that time with other things, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
There's not. I've often thought about this. There's not a week where I'm kind of just sat there. If you talk about kind of maybe come June, where maybe some of your year 13s or year 11s have left. That time is really easily filled with resourcing for the next year or sorting things out or reflecting.
Gain time, you're going to use it.
Yeah.
You'd never get round to use it. But it's like the Friday afternoon, last period. If you ever have that as a free, what is the worst free ever in the world to have free? You get to Friday afternoon, you go, oh,
yeah, you're done, yeah.
Absolutely,
no
completely knackered.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the thing. My wife gets the Saturday morning, and it's like, here you go. After all that, now you've got 2 children, and you're a dad. And it's
switch roles.
Oh my, it's tough, and you want a lion. You don't get a lion because it's 6:00 in the morning. I get the 4-year-old, who wants to be entertained. So it's exhausting, but it was rewarding. It was a good week. I got a lot done. I felt good about it. But the thing I resented the most, the data. All this other stuff was absolutely fantastic. Parents' evening, I wouldn't change for the world. I love talking to the parents. It's the bureaucracy. It's the bureaucracy that's killing. And it's the nature of systems set up to be bureaucratic, of having to do things for the sake of doing, that gets in the way of me wanting to do more of planting trees. And it often gets to that stage when you hear the government going, or you hear some commentator, some shock jock who went to school 40 years ago, back in the good old days. And they think, oh, great, what are they teaching them at school? And something goes wrong in society, they go, oh, we should put that in the curriculum. They should be taught first aid. They should be taught this and taught that. And like, seriously? Do you think we have the time, the resources, or the people to do all those things you think we need to do? And we're turning into an emergency service, or what do you call it, the 4th emergency service. But what we're doing on us average teachers in a week does take its toll. It takes an exhausting toll. And over time, over a couple of weeks, you do get ground down, you do get ill. Your mental tiredness is really tough. Keeping that motivation going and keeping yourself right. You do make mistakes. We're fallible. You hope that people forgive you that you make mistakes, because you are under pressure and you're tired, and sometimes that's not the case.
Yeah, well, relationships help there, don't they? Because if you've got good relationships, they know, students know, don't they, when you put the effort in and it's just gone a little bit awry or a bit wrong. It's a lot different to if you've just kind of not bothered. I think they do know the difference. So even if you've made the mistakes, as long as the again the relationships there, they know you, don't they? They know you built up that relationship. So they know that you're in it for them. You're there to support them. And that and going back to time as well. That happens in corridor conversations before school. Sometimes you walk down the drive as you're maybe back from bus duty, on the way back from bus duty. It's those kind of micro contact points that are so important that we just forget about as well. I think we're done for today, are we?
We'll wrap up in a minute. Yes, what we've been having a chat about was the average day and life and week of an average teacher, and we discovered that there's no such thing because it always varies and it's always very different for individuals and of course in different contexts, even within schools itself. But the fundamentals are still there. We are tasked with doing things outside our comfort zone all the time. We're tasked with doing things new. We're tasked with constantly changing things and tasked with, having to constantly evolve and to try and find better ways, better systems of trying to keep the essentials while at the same time balance the needs of keeping the monkey off your back, really, isn't it?
Which kind of ironically makes it such an interesting, fascinating, and hugely rewarding job.
It does indeed. Yep. So a couple of things then before we go. This has been Teachers Talk Radio. We are sponsored by Witherslack, who is the provider of SEN and care services. You'll find them at www.witherslackgroup.co.uk. You can also be a host on Teachers Talk Radio, like myself and my good friend Adam. And you can listen back, of course, to some of our fantastic shows, which we have a couple of great shows coming up today with Tom Starkey at 8 p.m. And we've got Maud at 5 p.m. on the Twilight Show. And, of course, you can always listen back to this and also other shows which are on Podbean and Twitter Spaces. I'd like to think it's a lovely afternoon. It's an unusually warm day for this time of the year.
Yeah, I've got the heating on as well. So
you do not have the heating on. Stop it.
Well,
why do you think I'm planting 420? I am planting 420 trees, and here you are putting the heater on.
Sorry.
I mean, seriously, do I need to?
Intervention is required.
Seriously, I'm going to. Yeah, how many trees now? By the end of this, how many more trees is going to have to be planted? Turn the heating on.
3 more trees for me, please.
Yeah, I think it is. It's getting like that. Tricky trees. We'll talk about that another time.
Brilliant.
As I say, thank you, and it has been wonderful to have you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye from me. Goodbye from Adam.
Goodbye from me.
Live from Derbyshire, this is The Sunday Lunch Show with Brent Poland, and you are listening live. This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org or join in the conversation by downloading the Podbean app and following Teachers Talk Radio. #TT Radio.